be slightly careful though of things like running, particularly. I find that running, I played rugby growing up. Obviously, we know each other from jiu-jitsu. I've done boxing, swimming, everything. There's something different about running. There's something different about long distance running. And you start getting a little bit euphoric. It's a bit like a drug. So I will do that because you're going to get your best, what we call chronobiology advantage at that time. The other thing as well is that's mainly when you're training and you're feeling good. Take advantage of it, Nevin. Like, use these things to your advantage for it. But from consultation with physiologists and dietitians, iron gets depleted over time as well. But also the timing of iron is key as well. So if you look at some of Peter Peeling's research out of University of Western Australia, he advises the Olympic committee on this and Olympic athletes. You have to basically offset your iron supplementation against the time of training. So if you train in the evening, you're best off having the iron in the morning because it's better absorbed into the body.
Ian, thanks for jumping on Zoom with me this afternoon. I really appreciate your time.
I had no choice.
But for everyone that's a return listener, Ian's actually, or Dr. Ian Dunican is actually the other half, or the better half, of the most popular podcast that I've put out to date in terms of minutes watched, the Sleep for Performance podcast on the Strength Institute podcast. So this one's a little bit different. This is my running a marathon little mini series where I'm hoping to pick Ian's brains about both some endurance training, but also sleeping for performance. And for those that are tuning in for the first time, Dr. Ian Dunican here is a PhD in sleep sciences, and also himself has a history of endurance conquest, I guess, in terms of ultra marathons and marathon distance runs. So thanks again, Ian, for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I had no excuse because I was stuck at home and I couldn't say I was away, so I had to say yes, didn't I?
Yeah, absolutely. No, well, I appreciate it nonetheless.
No, anytime, Nevin. I'm just joking. Anytime. Yeah.
No, I know. I guess before we get too much into it, could you just name a few of the sort of ultra marathon and endurance based events that you've done?
Yeah. So probably the most famous one I've undertaken twice has been the Leadville 100 miler, which is a race at altitude in the Colorado Rockies that goes for 100 miles or 170 k's roughly. And that goes from about 10,000 feet to about 13,000 feet roughly. And it's an out and back course. You run 50 miles out, turn around and come 50 miles back, which is good and bad because in the first 50 miles, you encounter some serious hills. And then, in the next 50, you got to come back up over them. So quite a long race. Took me 27 hours, 42 minutes continuously. Finished mid-pack in that race. So it was my first 100 miler to do and picked one of the most hardest. So that was that one. So I've done that twice. And then I have completed, I think 7 times I've ran the Ultra Trail Australia, which used to be the North Face 100. That's 100 kilometers. That's a 100 kilometer race in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, just outside Sydney. And my best time on that is about 13 hours, 42 minutes, which places me inside around roughly the top 13%. So decent enough for an amateur, but not good enough for a professional. So still some ways off that. And I've also completed twice I've completed the Cradle Mountain Run in Tasmania, which is about 82 k's. It's an unsupported race, so which means you don't have any checkpoints as such. You just basically bring your food and water for the day, and you start at 5:30 in the morning, and you got to get to the other side of the mountain as quickly as possible. So I think I did that in about 12 hours for the 82 k's. And then I've done some smaller ones, which are 50k races, 64k races here in Perth, and then a bunch of marathons as well, and lots of trail runs. So probably roughly over about 20 ultra marathons, maybe about 10 marathons, and maybe another 10 or 20 half marathons.
Which is really impressive, but hugely beneficial for me to be able to pick your brains about it, because I'm about 4 weeks in to my first marathon training program. And it's a bit of an accelerated program. And as you know from jiu-jitsu, I'm built a bit more for power as opposed to the long-term endurance. So it's definitely been a different animal for me to sort of undergo. But I guess the most important thing, I guess, how do you approach your endurance training in terms of structuring it out? Now, I've had a chat with a pro triathlete and a marathon runner who was quite a high level physiotherapist, and they both gave the same advice: no more than 10% increase per week.
Yeah.
But coming from a background of no running, if I only went up by 10%, starting where I started, there's no way I'd be able to get to a marathon in 12 weeks. So I am jumping up more, and I'm sort of accepting that increased risk of injury. But I want to do it as safely as possible. Did you sort of do the same thing? I mean, you're talking about a 160-kilometer run. How can you only increase by 10% per week, or I guess 10% increase in volume per week if your end goal is 160 kilometers? Are you working off a significantly lower weekly volume compared to the race itself, or how does that sort of work for you structure-wise?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you have to think about the distance of the race that you're going to undertake is definitely a factor. However, that doesn't mean you have to run that distance every single time you walk outside the door. So for example, if you're running a 10K, you don't have to run 10Ks every time at your fastest 10K every time. So the longer you go in terms of distance, when you start moving up even to, I would say, from marathon and above, you don't have to run 42 Ks each time you walk out the door. And I would actually suggest that for a marathon training, you do not have to run more than 32 Ks in one go. So I've done a 3-hour, 8-minute marathon, and I've never ran more than 32 Ks training for that.
Yeah.
So your kilometers across the week, I think, yeah, there's a chance that you might go up by maybe 15% some weeks or 20%, but it's all about the ebb and flow of that training cycle as well. And in general, what you're looking for, I would say, over the cycle is probably a gradual increase of 10%. Now, the other thing, Nevin, is that most people to do their first marathon are going to probably do a minimum of 16 weeks, if not even 24 weeks. You're trying to do it in 12.
Yes.
Which is probably a bit stupid, but that's okay. You're going to do the challenge, which is good. So you're going to try and have a bit more grit and determination to overcome it. So I think you need to also think about the potential for you to be power walking, as it's your first marathon. You're not doing a full training cycle. Plus, you're not the skinniest of guys or the smallest of guys. So you're going to find it harder than I would. So I think you need to think about building some other strategies as well in terms of power walking. But for me, to come back onto your original question, if I'm training for a 100-kilometer race, I wouldn't run more than 60 Ks in one go. My average weekly kilometers for a 100-kilometer race is somewhere, it's going to peak at about 75 to 80 max.
Okay. All right. So you're actually only working that, it's around that 75% of the actual race, but spread over the whole week.
Yes.
And are you taking the same approach that I've been given from the marathon runners before, where they said 2 to 3 short runs, one long run, trying to give yourself at least 1 day rest in between runs?
Yeah, roughly. I would say, so when I was training, let's say for any of those 100K races or Leadville, I was doing probably stupid training, but I was probably doing 4 to 5 runs a week, 1 to 2 kind of strength and conditioning sessions, plus 2 jiu-jitsu sessions. So on my days off of running, I was still doing something else. But then I was also trying to build in some running into those. So for example, on a Monday, I might run 8 kilometers. On a Tuesday, I'm going to CrossFit, but it was 6 kilometers away. So I would run to CrossFit, do the CrossFit session, and run home. The Wednesday session might be running again. It might be only 5Ks. So on this day, I might do 2 days. I might do running and then jiu-jitsu in the evening. Thursday, it might be 12K run. Friday, it might be 5K run and CrossFit. And then Saturday, it might be the big long run of 40Ks, and then Sunday off, as an example. But I'd always have a minimum of 1 day off a week. But that was generally kind of the rough cycle I would go on. And then in some cases, I actually had sometimes a day off or a lower day every 4th day as well, which is another strategy I used when I was training for Leadville, which was basically I would go hard for 3 days, and then on the 4th day would be like even just a 5 or 6K very easy run. Then do another 3 days and then have a full day off.
Yeah. Okay. That definitely makes sense. I guess at the moment I've been doing sort of 2 to 3 shorter runs, 1 long run each week. Each week was getting more and more of volume. My 4th week, which was just finished up, was my deload week, where I backed the overall volume down a little bit. just to let the body feel good. And it must have worked, because actually on my final run on the deload week, I felt fantastic. It was just a short one, 5 or 6 Ks. And I felt like I could have gone for 10 or 15 at a good pace. Like I just had no dramas at all. So I'm definitely taking my deload seriously. And I am enjoying sort of trying to figure out my pacing myself. That's probably been one of the hardest things is picking a pace and trying to stick to it for a period of time. I sometimes get into a good rhythm, and sometimes I'm all over the shop. So do you have any good tricks for that? I mean, at the moment, I just listen to podcasts when I run, because I tried listening to music and a good song would come on and I'd end up picking up my pace and burning out.
Yeah. I think basically just to keep an eye on the watch is what I would say. So look for an average pace. So if you want to do like 5.5 minute Ks, 6 minute Ks, 4.5 minute, whatever it is, and try to stick on that. So look at your, if you can set the watch, what I used to do was set the watch for my current speed. So I'm currently running at 4 minutes, 32 seconds, but my average speed so far since I started is 4 minutes, 10 seconds. So I go, right, I'm slowing off now. And my average speed since the start of the run is 4:10. And I'm trying to do this run at an average of 4:30. So I'm going to keep slowing it down to try and drag the average out a bit, just to keep it sort of on that even keel or that tempo. And if I start going too fast, don't be afraid to walk. Don't be afraid to stop and start power walking, because power walking is a great strategy, and I think it's underutilized on a lot of runners. Now, I would make two claims. I'll make two statements here. Number one, I'm not a running coach. And number two, I predominantly did off-road mountain type running. So that's where power walking becomes very beneficial, because you can't run up a lot of these big hills. You have to just power hike these things, and you're generally 9 times out of 10 wearing a backpack as well. So I would incorporate a lot of power walking into my sessions as well.
Okay. All right. I am because my distances haven't been going crazy long. I mean, the longest run so far was 14 Ks. This week is 18 Ks. I've been able to get them out all in one hit. I guess physically, the first part that breaks down for me is not so much my lungs and the rest of my body. It's more my hip flexors tighten up to the point where I don't feel like I can drive powerfully or have a good length stride. And that seems to be my limiting factor so far. It usually comes on the longer runs around that 10 or 11 kilometer mark. It just starts to get a little bit tight.
Yeah, so that's a common issue that everybody has, I think, even myself. And for many of us that spend a fair bit of time sitting in a chair like this on a computer, which I do a lot these days, tight hip flexors is going to be an issue. So I think it's really important that throughout the day, throughout the week, that you have a foam roller handy in most rooms that you walk into. You're constantly stretching your hip flexors and keeping them loose. But I'd also consider, Nevin, looking at the way you run, because this was something that changed my running. I used to have extremely tight hip flexors and extremely tight ITB, to the point where I would wake up in the middle of the night in agony with my ITB. I couldn't walk sometimes, couldn't even run. And it was like somebody had, I can't even describe the pain that used to be. And I just wanted to, when I used to go to the physio, I would say, I really want to just cut my leg open and like cut this cord on my ITB. It was that tight.
Wow.
But it wasn't until I changed my running style in about 2000 and probably 11, 12, yeah, that I really had some of the biggest gains in my running. So basically, lots of us run up and down like this. So if we imagine this line here in front of us on the camera is the x-axis, we kind of oscillate up and down like that as if we're running along the ground. What we need to do is probably lean forward slightly at about a 10 to 15 degree angle and let gravity assist us in our running as well, and be more natural in terms of how we run. So I would say try to lift up through your head, push your hips slightly forward, and lean into it as well, because this will really help you. So don't lean in where you crumple at the hip and you bend over, but you really want to be upright and lean slightly forward. So bring your chest forward and your hips, which will really help with your running style. There is a guy that can help you with this here in Perth. He's been on my podcast a number of times, called Jason Donaldson. He works with Power Speed Endurance. They do a lot of stuff around the CrossFit community, but also some ultra runners as well. And Jason can help you out with some technical analysis on this. And I think it's worthwhile, because regardless of your size, your training, you could get 10 to 20% improvements in this. For me, my ITB disappeared within 4 months. and I had very little ITB hip flexor issues after that from running.
Okay, fantastic. I'll definitely make a note of that and reach out. I'll book in to take all the help that I can get at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing I wanted to ask you about was how you manage your hydration and nutrition in both the lead up to your race or during like your long training sessions and during the race themselves. So, I mean, for my shorter runs, I haven't had an issue about carrying water because the run's done in half an hour, 45 minutes. For the longer runs, I was getting a little thirsty. I've just ordered a hydration vest with 2 500 ml soft flasks. And I've been experimenting with those carbo shot gels, 26 grams of carbs in the gel every half hour, just getting my stomach used to taking that and running at the same time.
Yeah.
What I find is that when I take those gels, they're so super sweet. I really want to drink water as well. And I was wondering, do you take the gels or do you just make sort of a fluid mix with, glucose and dextrose in the actual water?
Yeah, so I probably tried everything and I failed. So my very first 100-kilometer race, I think I ate 16 cheese and Vegemite bread rolls. I consumed about 26 Voltaren tablets. I drank everything from coffee to Coke to water, and I puked my guts up at the end of it. So I've tried every sort of shit really to get down me. What I've landed on, and it's a personal preference, is a product called E3, which is a West Australian-based product. E3 was designed for swimmers predominantly, but a lot of runners use it as well. And this is a powder that can, be basically mixed with water, powder mixed with water that provides you with carbohydrates, sodium, potassium, magnesium, so alleviates cramping as well. And for me, it's not that sweet, so it's easy to get in and keep down. So any of these kind of really highly sugar, flavorful drinks, I find really difficult. And over time, I end up just vomiting them out. So predominantly, I use E3. Secondly, in terms of nutrition, I try to avoid gels until I really need them. I try to use fruits as much as possible. So bananas or even potatoes. So what I do, Nevin, now, and what I've been actually doing in my new endeavor around ultra swimming, is I get those little baby food packages. You can buy them in the chemist and you can make your own baby foods. And I've been using them this year. So I think I've consumed maybe 4 energy gels in about 16 weeks training for a swim. And it's mainly been things like mashed potato into these, banana, rice pudding, mango, whatever it is, put into the baby foods. And I actually consume them as I go along because they're more natural and better. So for me, I find that's better and it sits in my guts better. And I don't feel the need to vomit. So E3, my own baby food sort of mix, if you want to call it that. And then finally gels at the very last time, at the very last sort of quarter of a race when I need them. So this is predominantly my strategy.
Okay. Now, when you're saying baby, like, is in you just puree them up and put them in little satchels that you can just take during the race?
Yeah, so you can buy them like in chemists anywhere, generally probably around Perth, these little refillable, resealable baby food pouches. So I just, with a Vitamix here, I'll put in a couple of bananas, can of rice pudding and some mango, blend it all up with a little bit of milk in it. And I just fill them up, a few days beforehand. And I practiced training with those swimming this year. And I've done it before for running. I also do mashed potatoes. So I make up a big mashed potato batch, put some milk into it, throw it all into the Vitamix, get it a bit more softer so it'll come out through the spout, and use that as well. So I use mashed potato and salt because I find that the longer I go, the more carbohydrate sort of foods I crave. And interesting enough, this morning, Nevin, I was interviewing another PhD in the area of chrononutrition, so around shift work and nutrition, Dr. Charlotte Gupta, and we spoke about this. And even with sleep-deprived people and physical activity, and over time in firefighters, we tend to go for more of these carbohydrate-rich foods. So for me, these have been very beneficial in having these as the race goes on and staying away from the sugar earlier on.
Yeah, fantastic. I'll definitely look into getting some of those resealable pouches there and making my own puree.
I think the key here, Nevin, is to try different things. Now is the time. Don't wait until race day. Don't think on race day, I'll just have this or I'll just have that. Practice with whatever you want to use on the day, practice with it. And you generally, I would say, you're going to start for your big long runs, you're going to need nutrition probably over about the 16-kilometer mark. You would start having to carry water and nutrition. If it was a bit warmer at the moment, I'd say over 10 Ks. So practice what you want to use. Also as well, same with your runners, whatever clothing you're going to wear. I think it's really good that you have a hydration pack as well. A lot of people carry little bottles, but by carrying little bottles, they can completely alter how you hold your arms and then alter your structure as well. So a lot of people hunch when they carry bottles to try and hold them up. So I think having the hydration pack will allow your back to relax as well. So definitely I would say practice with, sort of race conditions as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, that's on its way now. So hopefully I get that this week sometime. And that's what I found as well. I feel that it's kind of hard to, even with the gels, just to be, trying to eat and swallow and chew it all. Just sipping on a drink might work pretty well, but I'll definitely try the pureed foods high in carbohydrates. See how that feels. Do you monitor how many carbohydrates you're getting in the lead up and during the race, or are you just going on how it feels?
I just go on feel. I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, I went to a sports nutritionist about the mix and this and that and the other, and I just go on feel. So typically I will probably carbo load 2 days out. And so speaking to sports nutritionists about this, or sports dietitians, sorry, there is, whether you carbo load the day before or 2 days before, the results are still the same. So Simone at Nutrition Works here in Perth, she's down at HBF, she could offer advice on this. And obviously is way more qualified to talk about this than I am. But what I tend to do is, if the race is on a Saturday, I'll do most of my carbo loading on the Thursday. And then on the Friday night, I will have something like maybe soup, like a pumpkin soup or potato soup, with some salad, because generally on a Saturday morning, you're up pretty early to run these type of events, and particularly for ultra runs. Some of them start at 4 a.m., so you have to be up at 2 a.m. So I don't want to have a big, heavy stomach going to bed. So it's going to be about personal preference as well. For anybody doing their first event, I would err on the side of caution. Carbo load 2 days beforehand and have lighter meals the day before. Because I've done the carbo load thing the night before at like 8 o'clock and had to be up at 3:30 in the morning, and it wasn't good.
No. Yeah. Gastric irritation.
I probably lost about an hour in stops that day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I guess the next question I had, and you sort of mentioned this just before, a lot of these races do start early in the morning, which makes sense. You want to get it done before the sun's up in the middle of the day. It's nice and hot. But with our last podcast, you had mentioned that just naturally on body cycle, your body is really awake and able to perform quite well in the early evenings, late afternoons, in terms of lifting weights for performance. Is it the same with running? Like if I wait to do evening runs, will my body be more awake, feel better than compared to doing morning runs? Or should I be focusing on specificity now and doing all my training first thing in the morning before it gets too warm?
So, yeah, it's an interesting question. And it's probably a number of different variables you have to take into account. So number one, I would ask you, when is the race? What time of day is the race on it?
Oh, it's whenever I want to do it. I'm just doing it by myself.
Oh, so you're just going to run it. Okay.
I'm just going to run a marathon. It was more a personal goal. I want to run a marathon. Yep. So I'm just going to head outside whenever I want to and have at it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what I would say, pick a time now, because you need to train around that time. So whether it's going to be 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to start 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever it's going to be. So do you have a time in mind at the moment?
Again, I've been running all over the shop. So I was thinking about a morning run. Just to get it done early, sort of like a 7 or an 8 a.m. start, finish before midday was the plan. But a couple of my evening runs have been feeling really good recently. So I'm torn.
So if I had to pick a time, and because you can pick a time, I would say pick the afternoon. So what I would say is probably start around between 4 and 5, because you're going to be able to take advantage of your highest alertness. You've had a chance that day to hydrate adequately, have a coffee, whatever you like to do. You got a chance to go to the bathroom, whatever it's going to be. And because this time of year, and because you're going to be doing it in a few months, it's not going to be that hot. So you don't really have to worry about time of day in terms of heat, because if you're going to do it in like 8 weeks' time, it's most likely going to be somewhere between 16 to 20 degrees.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to worry about that. So I would do that. The only thing you want to bear in mind is probably light availability, as in it's going to get dark probably earlier. So you might want to think about that. But if I had to pick a time, I would probably start at 4:30. And actually,
Okay.
when I was in Europe 6-7 months ago on holidays, the Stockholm half marathon was on. I was in Stockholm in Sweden, and that started at 5:00. And I was like, "Oh, this is very civilized," because you have a chance to go through your day, hydrate, feed, go to the bathroom, whatever it is. So, if I had to pick a time to do a marathon, it'd definitely be around 4 to 5.
Perfect. All right. I'll start moving on my training to the afternoon.
Yeah, so I will do that because you're going to get your best what we call chronobiology advantage at that time. The other thing as well is that that's mainly when you're training and you're feeling good. Take advantage of it, Nevin. Like use these things to your advantage for, especially for your first one. You know, many people will talk about the feel good to get up in the morning and get out of the way and so on. Look, the evidence is divided on, you know, in terms of, when's the best time to train. But what we do know is that, well, it's not that it's divided, but we don't see much of a difference with people that get up in the morning, but we see more PBs or personal bests in the evening time. So we know that you're basically taking more of advantage of that chronobiology cycle.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Well, that sounds good to me. I can definitely shift my training towards the afternoon more. I got
Yeah.
plenty of time.
Do you have a time in mind that you want to run the marathon, like a duration? Do you want to do 3,
Yes.
4,
Yeah.
or
So
5, 6 hours?
basically, I looked at the average Sea to Surf marathon time, which was about 4 hours and 15 minutes. And then talking with Mike Laurie, who is a professional triathlete, he said, look, he goes, that's a tricky course because it's got some hills in it, whereas I'm going to be running probably more flat along the coast. To be honest, I'm just going to pick my own course around my neck of the woods up here in the northern suburbs. But at the same time, I want it to be a respectable time. So my goal is somewhere between a 4 hour and a 4 hour and 15 minute, which is a 5:40 to a 6 minute split.
Yeah. So therefore, you might want to think about your running paths, as in where you're going to go, and light availability. So you might even want to start a little bit early, maybe 3:30 or 3:00, just to give you a bit more time in the natural light. So yeah, we'll play around with those and see how you go. But I think if you're going to do that, between 3 and 3:30 will give you that most amount of time or that most amount of exposure, that evening time for running. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'll definitely do that. And I guess the last major question that I had for you, unless you have any other secret gems that you want to throw my way, is am I still looking to get, an 8 hour sleep in? I know that you said different parts of the sleep cycle, your body is sometimes recovering more versus your brain recovering more or cognitive function recovering more.
Yeah.
Is there a way to sort of biohack that where I can do something or take a supplement or try to go to sleep at a different time where it's going to recover my body more physically so I can get out and do these runs more efficiently?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the word biohack, but
Okay.
I'm a fan of the word what I can do, because I think biohack, people think like, oh, I'm going against like biology here and I'm cheating the whole system. So let's look at what we can do to help. So I would definitely say the first thing will be around caffeine levels, which we may have spoke about the last time. There's no consumption of caffeine during the day. So, probably stop all caffeine consumption by 2:00 at the latest in general. The other thing to look at, Nevin, is if you are consuming any of those gels or caffeine, those like little gel blocks, whatever, just have a look and make sure there's not caffeine in them. Some of those things are laced with caffeine. And if you take on too much caffeine, you might feel a bit sick. In terms of what you can do to help with your recovery, especially for runners, I would advocate using a powdered magnesium supplement. So something like Ultra Muscles, and having this at night after your dinner. This will definitely help. And then if you're training in the evening, take iron supplementation in the morning as well. So magnesium when you're going to bed after your dinner, and then iron supplementation in the morning. This would definitely help. So we know that studies have shown that zinc and magnesium basically help you increase time in stage 3 sleep, which is really important for physical repair and recovery. So if you are looking to alleviate those sore legs and hip flexors, probably having the Ultra Muscles would be beneficial.
Okay. All right. So you say zinc and magnesium. So should I be taking a zinc supplement as well in the evening?
Yep, you could take a zinc supplement as well. That would be beneficial as well. But magnesium, definitely, I would recommend. Yeah. So
Okay.
zinc and magnesium in the evening, and iron in the morning. So we know
And
these
and so
really help
why the
this running.
extra iron?
So the iron is going to help you to alleviate. So we see iron levels get depleted in runners. And again, I'm not an expert in this area, But from consultation with physiologists and dietitians, iron gets depleted over time as well. But also the timing of iron is key as well. So if you look at some of Peter Peeling's research out of University of Western Australia, he advises the Olympic committee on this and Olympic athletes. You have to basically offset your iron supplementation against the time of training. So if you train in the evening, you're best off having the iron in the morning because it's better absorbed into the body.
Okay.
So
perfect.
lots of people, when you start ramping up training loads, things that will be depleted over time is iron levels. So some of the top level athletes end up having to get iron infusions. So regardless of their diet, sometimes just people can't absorb or they can't basically get in enough iron. So there's a kind of a I can't explain this very well, but basically the more you exercise, and this is my stupid, silly way of explaining it, the more you exercise, the more your body kind of pushes away iron for high training loads and you can't absorb it correctly. And I've butchered that whole science there, so please don't quote me on that.
Paraphrasing, I understand.
I'm not even paraphrasing. I'm trying to just make sense of chunks of
Yeah.
stuff. But what I do know is that Peter Peeling is one of the experts in the world on this, and he trains a lot of athletes at WASE, and I do research with Pete as well, and I would listen to what he says. So there you go.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, perfect. All right. Well, we're looking put some beets on my omelet in the morning, get some magnesium I think in the evenings.
Yeah. So I definitely consider having those supplements, especially during this training time for the next 8 or 12 weeks. It's definitely going to help you. And I think Nevin as well. I think just if you want to do it, you're going to do it. You're going to learn a lot in this journey as well. I think everybody will learn things in their first marathon or first big run. Don't beat yourself up about not having it perfect or things gone wrong on the day. If you have to walk, you have to walk. Enjoy the experience, and it's a good challenge to work towards. And regardless of your time, not many people do these type of things. So try to enjoy the process as well, because it is a learning process, and it takes some people 20 marathons before they can get it down pat. So
yeah.
Don't get too stressed.
I know. I appreciate the advice, and I'm definitely enjoying it so far. Much more than what I initially thought when I started running. I quite enjoy the runs, and I'm really enjoying actually talking to different people about all these little tips and tricks. I'm finding it very interesting. So it's all been positive so far.
Be slightly careful though of things like running, particularly. I find that running. I played rugby growing up. Obviously, we know each other from jiu-jitsu. I've done boxing, swimming, everything. There's something different about running. There's something different about long distance running. When you start getting a little bit euphoric. It's a bit like a drug, and so it can grip you. So I'd be interested to see when you go beyond the 30K mark, particularly how you feel, and what your next challenge might be after that, because you might get addicted to it. The endorphins from it and the sense of, I don't know, the flow state you can get into running is quite unique.
Yeah,
and it can become very addictive very quickly.
I can see that. Well, it's also helping in this time that we can't do jiu-jitsu at the moment. Is I've dropped 5 kilos in the first 4 weeks. I'm not holding my calories back. It's just the extra exercise. While I can't do jiu-jitsu, I'm going to get down to a nice lightweight class. So I've got a good power to weight ratio and a good engine by the time we get to start rolling again.
Yeah. No, and it's good look to mix up things and do something different. Like I'm going to definitely get back into running this year. I don't know if you're going to release this audio, the video with this audio, but some people might see a nice big gash on my neck there.
Yes, so yeah, there'll be audio and video.
Audio and video. So if you're looking at that gash going, what happened to that guy? Did he cut his neck? Did someone stab him? I had a spinal fusion 5 weeks ago, which was basically to cut you up in here, push all your giblets to one side and go in and put in a titanium disc in where my disc was degenerating and putting a steel cage around it as well. So I'm on a road to recovery for that at the moment. So it's going to be 12 to 16 weeks. But one of the things I will be doing now that I have this fix is actually getting back more into running. So one of the reasons why I stopped doing a lot of long distance running was because I had such issues with my neck, traps, upper back, and sort of rib cage. So now that the C4, C5 issue's been sorted out, I can now get back into more long distance running, because I was in a lot of pain for a long time, and it was one of the reasons why I stopped running, because my back was so screwed up. So now hopefully with this I'll be able to get back and start doing a lot more running. Fingers
crossed for you there, and who knows, maybe I'll get so hooked we can do 100-kilometer ultra together or something.
Yeah, I've seen crazier people do it, so it wouldn't surprise me yeah, I've seen a few mates who there was a group of guys I had mates a few years ago going, oh, I couldn't run 100 k's, I couldn't do that. I said, of course you could. All you got to do is train for it. And 12 months later, they ran it.
Yeah.
So you can do it. It's definitely going to be in the head. You just got to remember that when you think you can't go another inch, you can just take one more step, and then you just take one more step and one more step. So yeah, it's easy. You can do it.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate your time, Ian, for coming on again and dropping some great knowledge on me.
No worries. Hope it helped.
Absolutely did. Thanks very much, and I'll chat with you again soon.
No worries. Thanks, David.